I can remember the first time that I ever heard my song on the radio. It was probably '81, my first record.
What if the king of country music is hiding a secret so heartbreaking it could change everything you thought you knew about him? George Strait has spent decades at the top, beloved, untouchable, and unstoppable. But behind the spotlight and the sold-out stadiums lies a personal struggle he's never shared publicly. Whispers are now swirling, and fans everywhere are left wondering, has the time come for his final goodbye? From tragic family loss to a silent battle no one saw coming. The truth is more painful and powerful than anyone expected. But it's not just George. Other beloved stars are also facing shocking turns in their lives, revealing confessions and heartbreak that have rocked Hollywood to its core. What happened behind closed doors? Why are so many legends suddenly stepping away from the spotlight? Stick around, because the story you're about to hear will leave you stunned. Back in the dusty lanes of Big Wells, Texas, George and Norma's journey began with an almost accidental spark. Neither of them knew then that teenage glances at the county fairgrounds would lead to 5 decades of unwavering devotion. George, splitting his time between ranch chores and high school football, didn't give much thought to love until that first fateful date. You won't believe how a simple evening under the Texas stars could change 2 lives forever. He called her hot, but the real fire kindled between them would burn far longer than any teenage crush. Raised on his father's sprawling 200-acre cattle ranch, George found peace in open fields and the steady rhythm of ranch life. Yet beneath that calm exterior was a restless spirit. While Norma quietly tended to their home life, George wrestled with a question that wouldn't let him rest. Was ranching his destiny? Or was music? Looking back now, it almost seems poetic that a boy who could herd cattle with ease would one day herd audiences into sold-out arenas. But more surprising still was the path that tugged at his heart first: rock and roll. As a teenager, George's world wasn't lined in cowboy boots, but electric guitar riffs. The British invasion swept across Texas, and suddenly he was strumming Beatles covers with the Stoics, dreaming of stadium lights instead of barn dances. Who could have guessed that the boy who skipped country hits on the radio, choosing instead to listen to the Farmer's Report, would eventually become country music's biggest icon? Here's the twist. The moment he stumbled into a live country show, something ancient and soulful spoke to him. The legends, Hank Williams, Merle Haggard, Lefty Frizzle, George Jones, became guides on his journey back home to the genre he once ignored. By December 4th, 1971, George and Norma had eloped to Mexico in a whirlwind of young love and daring resolve. Right after high school, they stood before a justice of the peace, hands trembling, promising forever. That ceremony wasn't just a formality. It was their declaration that no stage, no lawman, no storm of life could drive them apart. Returning home for a church blessing, they sealed their vows in Pearsall, Texas, but it was the Mexican chapel where their real adventure began. Just months later, George traded his cowboy hat for an army helmet when he enlisted at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. The wide open seas replaced vast Texan plains, but the discipline and camaraderie he found echoed his ranch days. Norma joined him shortly thereafter, and on October 6, 1972, their daughter Jennifer arrived, turning their duo into a trio and giving George a reason to fight for both his family and his dreams. Even in uniform, music whispered to him, and when an Army-sponsored band called Rambling Country opened auditions, he jumped at the chance. His first gigs with the group were modest, small stages on bass, but they reawakened the dream that country music was his true home. In 1986, the the Straits suffered an unimaginable tragedy. The kind of personal loss that no amount of fame or fortune could soften. Their daughter, Jennifer, just 13 years old, was taken from them. The world never truly knew how deeply that loss broke them, because George shut down publicly. He stopped giving interviews, pulled back from the press, and channeled his grief into his music instead. That silence, though, spoke louder than words. And for fans who had followed his journey, it added a layer of depth and heartbreak to his already soulful sound. But here's where the resilience kicks in. In the face of devastation, George didn't collapse. He transformed. His music became more meaningful, more reflective, and his presence on stage carried a weight that made every lyric feel personal. Behind the scenes, Norma became the heartbeat of their home, the anchor holding their world together. And in time, George found new purpose in philanthropy, creating the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation to honor his daughter's memory, quietly donating to children's charities while avoiding media attention. That's what makes this story powerful, the quiet strength behind the fame. Now, while his emotional resilience built the core of his identity, George Strait's financial empire was nothing short of legendary. Unlike many celebrities who chased trends, George played the long game and won. He didn't splurge recklessly, he invested with purpose. Real estate became one of his smartest moves. One of his most talked about properties was his custom-built estate in the hills of San Antonio. A Spanish-style mansion sprawled across 12 acres, featuring a resort-style pool, a guest house, and panoramic views of Texas hill country. Listed at $7.5 million, this property wasn't just a home, it was a statement. Then came the cars. George's garage is a tribute to old-school class and Southern grit. From the classic 1969 Chevrolet Corvette to a sleek black Bentley Continental GT, his collection isn't about excess. It's about style, history, and understated power. It speaks to who George is, a man who doesn't shout about his wealth, but lets it speak through craftsmanship and legacy. Watches? George Strait is a fan of timeless design. He's been spotted wearing classic Rolex models like the Day-Date President, a watch synonymous with success and sophistication. These are not just accessories. They're heirlooms that reflect a lifetime of achievements. Private jets? Absolutely. George owns and frequently travels via a Gulfstream G450, a high-performance aircraft known for luxury, comfort, and reliability. This isn't about showboating. For a touring musician who spent decades on the road, a jet became not just a convenience, but a necessity, one that allowed him to balance fame with family life. Now, let's talk business. George isn't just a performer, he's a businessman. He launched his own tequila brand, Código 1530, a premium tequila line that quickly gained traction among A-list circles. With his name and vision behind it, the brand expanded globally and added millions to his portfolio. And that's not the only move. Over the years, George made quiet investments in Texas ranching, oil-related ventures, and even insurance portfolios tied to the music industry, protecting not just his income, but his entire brand. And their journey has been anything but ordinary. By 2021, George wasn't just a country legend. He was reflecting on memories most could only dream of. That year, he shared a throwback image of him and Norma standing proudly beside President George H.W. Bush at the White House. It wasn't just a photo. It was a quiet nod to how far a Texas boy with a guitar had come. But nothing compared to the moment that December when George sang "I Cross My Heart" on stage in Las Vegas for their 50th wedding anniversary. Fans were in tears. He didn't just sing it, he lived it. Sharing how they'd fallen in love as teenagers and eloped to Mexico, George opened a window into the soul of a relationship built on love, loyalty, and resilience. But even the strongest love stories aren't immune to heartbreak. In a twist no one saw coming, their world changed forever in 1986. That year, their daughter Jennifer, just 13, was stepping into adolescence with light in her eyes and freedom in her spirit. Like any parents, George and Norma trusted her judgment. She was growing up, and they believed she was responsible enough to make good choices. That night, when she asked to go out, they said yes, never imagining it would be the last time they'd see her alive. The tragedy unfolded in seconds. Jennifer, sitting in the front seat without a seatbelt, was in a car driven by a young man, Gregory Allen. As he sped through a turn, he lost control. The car flipped, and Jennifer was thrown from the vehicle. The impact claimed her life. Just like that, the light was gone, and no courtroom decision or legal consequence could rewrite what had happened. One of the most promising chapters in George and Norma's lives had been ripped away. Behind the scenes, the grief hit Norma the hardest. Her sorrow was wrapped in guilt, questions that never left her mind. Could she have said no? Could she have insisted on something different? The weight was unbearable. And George, who'd always been in the spotlight, suddenly wanted nothing to do with it. He vanished from interviews, avoided conversations, and buried his pain in silence. The man who once poured his soul into lyrics was now retreating into a world too painful to describe. But out of the darkness came something that would carry Jennifer's spirit forward. Later that same year, George and Norma launched the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation. This wasn't a publicity move, it was their lifeline, their way of transforming anguish into hope. Through it, they focused on supporting children in need, doing for others what they wished they could have done for their own. It became Norma's mission. She poured everything into that cause, while George returned to the stage, each performance now carrying the silent weight of everything he'd lost. Their son, Bubba, just 5 at the time, needed them too, and that meant learning how to survive the grief together. George continued to sing because for him, music wasn't just a career, it was therapy, a way to speak without saying the words out loud. But life wasn't done testing them. In 2009, another blow came. George's brother, John Byron Buddy Strait, passed away at 58. Just when they'd found a rhythm again, sorrow came knocking once more. Buddy had been a steady presence in George's life, a brother, a confidant, and losing him only deepened the emotional scars. But George, as always, took the pain and turned it into something timeless. His music didn't falter. In fact, it reached new heights. From 1986 to 1989, while his heart was still healing, George delivered 11 consecutive #1 hits. In a way, tragedy had sharpened his edge. His voice, once filled with youthful charm, now carried a deeper wisdom. Norma isn't just his wife. She's the girl he loved before the fame-chasing tours and sold-out stadiums. She was there through the rough bar gigs, the lean years, and the wild success. If there's ever been a reason for George to walk away from the stage, it would be her. And if the rumors are true, this may not be just a break from music. It might be the final farewell fans never wanted to hear. Could this really be the last time we see the King of Country on stage? Even with a life of luxury at his fingertips, private jets to Vegas, secluded stays at the mansion tucked beside the MGM Grand, and the kind of wealth that buys peace and privacy, George remains grounded. none of it matters more than family. That's why, even as he travels in style and lives surrounded by success, he's now contemplating the one choice that speaks volumes: stepping away for good. And in true George Strait fashion, he's doing it quietly, humbly, without fanfare. This isn't the first time George hinted at goodbye. Back in 2012, he stunned fans when he announced he was retiring from touring. He wasn't leaving music behind entirely, just the long, grueling life on the road. But it felt like the beginning of the end. He launched the Cowboy Rides Away tour, and fans swarmed every show, knowing it could be their last chance. The tour began in Lubbock, Texas in 2013, and by the time it wrapped in 2014 at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, more than 104,000 people had gathered for a night that made music history. It was a record-breaking moment. That night, George didn't just say goodbye, he redefined what a farewell could look like. He crushed ticket sales records and left fans in tears. A live album, DVD, and televised special followed. But even with that epic goodbye behind him, George couldn't stay away for long. He released Cold Beer Conversation in 2015. It didn't top the charts like his earlier work, but fans didn't care. They weren't listening for hits. They were listening to a man still singing from the heart. And just when you thought the story had been written, George rewrote the ending once again. In June 2024, he returned to the stage in Texas, this time at Kyle Field at Texas A&M University. The crowd, over 110,000 fans. Yes, he shattered his own previous record. Who else but George Strait could break history twice in one lifetime? But here's the twist. This wasn't just another concert. It felt different, as if George himself knew it might be one of the last. Now, as fans reflect on the meaning behind that monumental show, a haunting question lingers. Was that the moment we all said goodbye, without realizing it? And yet, this isn't a story just about George the artist. It's about George the man. He's more than platinum records and cowboy hats. He's a quiet philanthropist, too. Since 2010, he's been a dedicated face of the Wrangler National Patriot Program, tirelessly advocating for veterans and their families. He's also appeared in national campaigns for the Tractor Supply Company, not because he needed the exposure, but because his influence still means something. So, as the rumors swirl and the silence deepens, fans are left to wonder, is this really goodbye? And if it is, what comes next for the man who gave us everything?